The screen flickered to life with a sharp, synthetic chime. A galactic empire broadcast, forced onto every civilian and military network within Terran space. Blue-tinged images of charred buildings and shattered resistance lines painted the screen. The Empire's sigil pulsed at the corner, a constant reminder of dominance. At the center of the transmission stood High Marshal Vexer Calran, armored in obsidian plating etched with golden runes. Behind him, an Imperial banner fluttered over the crushed city of Kalas 7. His voice, smooth and sharpened with contempt, carried across the stars. Let this stand as proof. Humanity bends easily. Your colonies burn. Your people kneel. And your soldiers? They weep like children before real warriors. He paused as cheers erupted behind him, Imperial troops dragging Terran survivors into view. Bloodied, bruised, bound. One tried to spit, but was silenced by the stock of a plasma rifle. Calran continued. We offered you assimilation. You chose defiance. Now you crawl. He looked directly into the camera. To the leaders of Earth, send your next batch of cowards. We will break them too. The screen cut to black. The Empire's emblem faded slowly, as if savoring its own dominance. Far beneath the Atlantic Ocean, in a secure bunker known only as Deep Vault Zero, silence ruled the room. A dozen Terran brass stood around a central command table, the last echoes of the broadcast still reverberating in the chamber. No one moved. No one breathed heavy. They had seen defeats. But this? This was calculated humiliation. General Mireles finally spoke. They executed the children too. Publicly. Her voice didn't shake, but the rage underneath coiled tightly. Across the room, a figure remained seated, arms folded. His uniform was black, unmarked. No medals. No insignias. Just a nameplate, Weller. His eyes were fixed on the empty screen. Unblinking. Permission to activate Omega Black, he said flatly. The room turned. Admiral Keen exhaled. You're talking about deploying the ghosts? Weller nodded. We trained them for this. Let them out of the dark. A junior official stepped forward. We can still negotiate. This doesn't require monsters. Weller looked up slowly, his voice calm but hollow. They made this personal. They did not kill soldiers. They made an example. That's not war. That's theater. So we'll respond with horror. Mireles leaned on the table. Do they even know what's coming? No. Weller stood. And that's the point. 6 hours later, high above Earth, a black cruiser detached from orbital silence. It bore no ID code, no registry, no lights. Inside, men and women dressed in matte armor sat wordless. Faces calm. Eyes dead. They were not young. These were veterans who had already seen more than most. Omega Black. Their presence was never confirmed. Their existence, denied by every administration. When diplomacy failed, and the enemy demanded blood, Earth sent myths. Weller stood before them, helmet under one arm. You all know what we're walking into. Kalas 7 is crawling with Imperial occupation. Our mission is surgical. No wide-scale engagement. No show of force. Just whispers. Terror. We're not fighting their army, we're dismantling their faith in command. No one responded. They did not need to. He scanned the room. We are not there to win. We are there to remind them what they forgot. A beat. We were born in darkness. Let them choke on it. Kalas 7's night was suffocating. Thick clouds blocked the twin moons. Lightning flashed, but the thunder never followed. The Empire's outposts blinked like eyes across the ruined landscape, cold and mechanical. Outpost Zeta 9 sat in the valley below an old Terran mining facility. A half-dozen Empire grunts played cards under poor lighting. Their rifles leaned lazily against walls. Laughter came easy. They had not seen real resistance in days. One of them glanced outside. You hear that? He asked. The others froze. The wind howled, but something underneath it pulsed. A low, rhythmic thump, like a heartbeat. Then silence. The power died. Check the generator! The squad leader barked. Two grunts stepped out, weapons raised. The searchlight flared, then blinked out again. They never came back. Inside, static filled the comms. One of the soldiers turned to speak, and saw writing smeared across the wall in what looked like ash. You mocked us. Now we answer. A scream followed. Then gunfire. Then nothing. Hours later, aboard the Empire's regional command ship, a junior officer approached Calran with unease. Hi, Marshal. Zeta 9 went dark. No response. No distress signal. Just silence. Calran waved it off. Malfunction. Storm interference. But sir, no life signs. Calran looked up, irritation creeping into his voice. You think this is retaliation? By whom? The Terrans sent farmers with rifles. This is beneath my concern. The officer hesitated. The site was marked. Marked? Calran frowned. The officer held out a hollow image. A Terran phrase scrawled in burning residue across a wall. Calran stared at it. He did not speak. Back aboard the stealth cruiser, Weller stood beside a wall-length display of Kayla's 7. Several outposts now pulsed red. He tapped one, target confirmed. Behind him, one of the boogeymen whispered, They won't believe this is real. Weller's mouth curled into something that almost resembled a smile. Exactly. That's when the fear starts working. He turned to his team. Next insertion in 30 minutes. We leave no footage. No chatter. No survivors unless instructed. They nodded. He paused. If captured? The chorus came as one, a whisper drilled into their souls. We don't exist. By morning, 3 more outposts would be silent. Dozens of Empire soldiers would be missing. No one would see the attackers. No trace would be left. Only the whispers would remain. And across Imperial space, a question would begin to surface, quietly at first. What happens when the cowards stop playing fair? Kayla 7 didn't sleep, but it was the kind of planet that grew unnaturally quiet when something unnatural stirred. The twin moons vanished behind thick gray clouds, and the wind cut through the valleys with a cold hiss that felt too deliberate. Not natural. Not weather. Something else. High above, inside Imperial Command on the southern continent, tension simmered. The latest report arrived with only one word typed into the Empire's encrypted comms channel. Gone. Gone. Not killed. Not attacked. Just gone. 3 forward outposts, Zeta 9, Epsilon Ridge, and Fort Maltec, had gone completely dark. Not one distress signal. Not one body found. No scorch marks. No skirmish logs. Just abandoned posts and equipment left where it dropped. Marshal Calran stared at the data while the room around him muttered. Sabotage. Storm interference. Terran psyops. He clenched his jaw and silenced them with a glance. There are no Terran psyops. They're cowards behind fancy drones. But even he didn't believe it. The 4th outpost, Drenfall Station, had sent a recon patrol at dawn. 6 soldiers, 2 scouts, a tracker, and 3 riflemen, experienced and hardened by years of frontier fighting. They never made it past the 2nd hour. Only one returned. He stumbled into the main gate alone, armor cracked, eyes wide and unfocused. His weapon was missing. Blood slicked his shoulder. The guards rushed to stabilize him, but he shoved them away. His voice cracked with a dry, whispering panic. They weren't there, but they knew our names. He collapsed before he could explain. The medics later reported no physical trauma that matched his psychological break. His neural scans pulsed erratically, more like someone suffering from prolonged exposure to psychic warfare, but there were no such records in Terran capability files. They should have been unable to do this. And yet, deep in the old Kalar 7 mining tunnels, Weller stood in darkness with his squad. No lights. No beacons. Just oxygen masks and heartbeat trackers on silent mode. He whispered into his comms. Phase 2. Prep noise. Operative Vega knelt by a corpse left behind in a sleeping bag. No sign of struggle. No wounds. Just a terrified expression frozen in death. Beside it, a pulse beacon activated, rigged to emit strange, low-frequency interference. They called it the whisper tone. A synthetic pulse mixed with barely audible human phrases, echoes of cries, laughter, even lullabies. It bypassed logic and tapped directly into subconscious memory. The Empire had never heard anything like it. Because no sane military used fear as a first weapon. Back at Empire HQ, Calhoun stormed into the control center. I want eyes on every meter of this sector. Deploy thermal scans. Every drone. Every shadow. His adjutant stepped in. Sir, we've already done so. There's nothing there. He slammed his gauntlet on the console. Nothing doesn't kill trained squads. An alarm chirped, brief and sharp. One of the data officers turned pale. A relay drone, it captured something. He pulled it up on the main screen. Fuzzy thermal footage. Nothing at first. Then a shape moved through mist, quick, humanoid, but too smooth, gliding almost without weight. The room fell silent. Reverse. Zoom in. They did. It was only one frame, but it was enough. The figure wore matte black armor with no insignias, no faceplate design, no heat signature. But its left gauntlet bore a single word burned into the plating. Grim. Uller watched from miles away as panic began to bloom in Imperial channels. They were listening. They were always listening. He knelt beside a captured officer who had been left alive, hands bound, blindfolded, mouth gagged. Not harmed. Not tortured. Just held. Then released. The man ran. Tripped over roots. Crawled back to base. Inside his jacket, they found a Terran combat knife and a piece of old Terran paper. On it, scrawled in human blood. This is mercy. There will not be another. The officer was placed in medical confinement. He kept repeating the same line. I never told them my name. No one knew how the attackers had gotten it. Back inside Deep Vault Zero on Earth, a civilian analyst watched the feeds coming in. She turned to General Mireles. This isn't a strike team. This is psychological warfare on a scale we never authorized. Mireles didn't look away from the display. They didn't need authorization. They were built for this. The analyst hesitated. But why the shadows? Why not just take the Empire head on? Mireles finally looked at her. Because a dead soldier is buried. But a terrified one, he spreads the story. Empire Command tried to counter. They deployed Stormguard units with enhanced vision systems and full thermal gear. Their patrols doubled. Drones hovered over every known sector. But the attacks didn't stop. In fact, they evolved. Entire patrols went missing without a trace. Some drones broadcasted their own last moments, static-filled, short, punctuated by flashes of figures moving in the fog. One transmission ended with a simple phrase spoken calmly. You taught U.S. war. We perfected fear. Across the outer rim, rumors spread. Imperial lieutenants began filing withdrawal requests. Some refused to leave their bunkers at night. Field reports cited hallucinations, lights turning on without power, and the sound of Terran children singing in abandoned tunnels. Even Calhoun could no longer deny it. They're ghosts, his adjutant whispered during a late-night briefing. Calhoun didn't correct him. Far from the chaos, Weller stood in the silent dark of a captured facility, helmet off. His expression unreadable. He looked down at a hollow map of Kayla 7. He placed a red marker over the capital stronghold. Time to take the throne, he murmured. Vega approached behind him. They're afraid now. We could force a retreat. Weller nodded. But fear is only the beginning. Let's teach them despair. By the next morning, half the outer colonies had begun intercepting fragments of encrypted Empire transmissions, distress calls, screams, and ghosted locations no one answered anymore. A single message began to circulate through the black channels of mercenaries and rebels alike. They sent the cowards. Then Earth sent the monsters. The Empire's Central Command Dome on Kayla 7 was a marvel of alien engineering, built from crystalline alloys that pulsed with internal power, nearly impervious to standard bombardment. Towering above the ruined skyline, it was meant to inspire awe and submission. That night, it was silent. No banners. No patrols. The floodlights stayed off, despite protocol. The fear that had crept into the outer posts had made it to the capital's core. Now, even the elite were listening for ghosts. Inside, High Marshal Calrun sat rigid in his war chair, surrounded by senior officers. Every report brought worse news. Entire battalions evaporated. Weapons systems hijacked mid-operation. Officers found in their bunks, throats untouched, but eyes wide with horror. There must be a pattern. Calrun growled. We are the Empire. We crush worlds. This, he pointed at the growing red clusters on the display map. This is humiliation. General Drax, one of his most loyal commanders, leaned in. This is not conquest. It is retribution. And it moves like it knows us. Calrun slammed a fist down. Then find who is feeding them intel. But no one responded. They all knew, nothing had leaked. There were no traitors. The Terrans simply knew where to strike. And worse, they knew when. 17 miles beneath the Capitol Dome, in the sewers that ran like ancient veins through Kayla 7's underside, Weller led his squad through knee-deep black water. The walls were slick with condensation and time. They moved without sound. Not out of discipline. Out of instinct. Vega glanced at her scanner. No heat signatures within 2 clicks. But there's movement ahead. Non-organic. Weller nodded. Turrets or drones. Reroute and blind them. No engagement. Operative Grimm peeled away without a word, vanishing down a smaller channel. They didn't break formation. Didn't pause. They were weeks into this now, operating with muscle memory and a war rhythm so precise, it felt more like ritual than strategy. Each operation built towards something larger. A message. They weren't hunting soldiers. They were dismantling the myth of Empire invincibility. Back at Imperial Command, the whispers began to harden into mutiny. A lieutenant colonel was dragged out in chains after he suggested withdrawing all outer forces to regroup at the Galactic core. Treason, Calrun said. But that seed had already taken root. A junior officer intercepted a strange communication that hadn't originated from the Empire or its enemies. It was brief. 6 seconds. Just a grainy audio clip. But the voices were human. Laughing. Quietly. Followed by one phrase. We are what you become when survival isn't enough. The officer tried to erase the file. Couldn't. The system locked him out. Then the lights in the room blinked. Just once. But it was enough. By morning, the officer had vanished from his bunk. His armor was left behind. Cleaned. Folded. On the chest plate, a message written in Terran script. You're welcome. Empire morale broke in pockets first. Squads on the rim requested extraction. They were denied. Some went dark. Others turned their weapons on themselves before the silence claimed them. It was no longer combat. It was infection, fear spreading faster than orders could contain. Calrun finally issued an emergency planetary lockdown. No one leaves Kayla 7. No transmissions in or out. Nothing gets past the shield grid. It was meant to contain panic. Instead, it boxed the nightmare in. At 0300, the power grid failed for 7 seconds. Just 7. But in those 7 seconds, every holographic system in the capital flickered with the same image. A human face. Masked. Black helmet. Crimson visor. Unmoving. The Boogeymen had never broadcast themselves before. Until now. Every Imperial citizen saw it. Soldiers. Commanders. Civilians. Then came the voice. We were forged in war. You lit the match. The image faded. The power returned. Weller stood inside the communications array beneath the surface dome. It was the third largest structure on Kayla 7. Now it was empty. His team had ghosted in, shut down systems, and seeded coded terror messages in every relay. No alarms triggered. "We've done enough," Vega whispered. "No," Weller replied. "We've done what they thought we'd do. Now we do what they never will expect." He turned toward the central control core. "We take the dome. Tonight." The Empire never considered it possible. A direct strike on the capital's command dome was beyond belief. Too many defenses, too many layers. But those defenses were designed to stop armies, fleets, orbital strikes. Not 6 silent operators who moved like shadows and killed without sound. At precisely 0417, Calron's private chambers went dark. His guards didn't call for help. They didn't fire. They didn't even scream. The silence did that. Calron stood in the pitch black, armor still half on, staring into nothing. He could feel it, something watching him. Breathing, maybe? Or pretending to. He reached for his comms. It sparked dead. Then the lights returned. He was alone. The door still sealed. But written across his desk, in Terran blood. "We are already inside." By dawn, dozens of Empire communication relays broadcasted a new signal. Not from Earth. Not from any known source. Just a pulse. A rhythm. Human. A heartbeat. The Boogeymen weren't just on Kayla 7 anymore. They were in the system. And they were multiplying. In orbit above the planet, a civilian transport intercepted an unmarked transmission. No coordinates. No encryption. Just one message. "Cowards don't break empires. But nightmares do." Kayla 7 burned quietly. Not with fire, but with dread. The once pristine streets near the central command dome lay abandoned. Vehicles were overturned. Market stalls were left mid-sale. No bodies. Just shoes in the road. Personal items dropped. Like everyone had simply vanished. Inside the dome, Calron paced his war chamber like a man trapped in his own legend. His ceremonial armor felt heavier by the hour. The command staff that had once stood at attention now slumped in exhaustion or sat wide-eyed, watching invisible corners of the room. "Sir, we've lost contact with the northern comm spires," reported Drax, though his voice barely carried. "They went offline 10 minutes ago. No signal." "Saboteurs?" Calron muttered. "No breach was recorded," Drax added. "They just stopped transmitting." The silence after was longer than it should have been. In that gap, everyone in the room thought the same thing. Not saboteurs. Not bombs. The Boogeymen had gotten there. And left nothing. Underground, Weller stood before a massive reinforced gate. Behind it, the dome's core defense hub, guarded by automatic turrets, pressure-locked doors, and a dozen AI monitors scanning for threats. But the monitors were already dark. Operative Grimm had slipped into the system hours before. Quietly. No alerts. One line of corrupted code, uploaded through an old maintenance drone, had shut everything down. Weller pressed a hand to the gate. "Now." Vega inserted a palm-sized device. A quiet pulse vibrated through the metal, and the door slid open without a sound. Inside, the command AI's voice stuttered once, then died. The heart of Kayla 7 was defenseless. Across the city, in the secure residential sector, families of ranking officers tried to evacuate. But the transport pads refused activation. Not jammed, simply offline. The civilians began hearing things, footsteps overhead. Faint breathing through vents. Whispers behind walls. Doors locking from the outside. Children cried. Parents screamed at the walls. No one came. They were being watched, but never touched. Not yet. In the throne chamber, Calron reviewed a final report. Outer colonies dark. Reinforcements recalled. Civilians panicking. Military strength broken. He crushed the tablet in one hand. "Enough," he said. "If they want war, let them face it." Drax stepped forward, unsure. "Sir, with respect, we do not even know how many there are. They do not attack like soldiers. They hunt like They are men, Calhoun snapped. Flesh and blood. I will not cower from humans. He stood tall and raised his voice. Prepare the Red Protocol. Seal the dome. Arm every man. We fight now. But Red Protocol had already failed. Because someone had already activated it. And rerouted it. From a control terminal hidden deep beneath the dome, Weller watched the emergency lockdown seal the outer gates exactly as planned. They're caging themselves in, Vega whispered, almost in awe. Weller's voice was low. Good. Let's make it a tomb. An hour later, the dome descended into chaos. Lights flickered, corridors locked unpredictably, and internal comms looped a distorted audio file. It was an old Earth nursery rhyme. One line played over and over. Hush, little soldier, don't say a word. Every Imperial system, environmental controls, lighting grids, defense turrets, now belonged to the Boogeymen. Calhoun stood in the darkened war room, flanked by only 2 remaining guards. Drax was gone. Either dead or hiding. The other commanders had sealed themselves into bunkers no one trusted anymore. There was a sound, a dull thud from the hallway. Then another. Boots. Not rushing. Pacing. Measured. Calhoun raised his rifle, chest rising. The door opened. Weller stepped through. Not dramatic. No explosion. No weapon raised. Just a slow walk into the room, his armor matte black, visor blood red, reflecting nothing. Calhoun fired. Weller moved left. 2 shots missed. He closed the distance, ducked the 3rd shot, and twisted the rifle from Calhoun's hands like he was disarming a child. He didn't speak. Calhoun swung a fist, roaring. Weller sidestepped it, grabbed the marshal by the collar, and drove him back into the command table. The 2 guards charged. Vega stepped in behind Weller and put both down with precision shots. 2 seconds. No hesitation. Now it was just Weller and Calhoun. The marshal coughed, blood filling his throat. You monsters! Weller finally spoke. Calm. Cold. We're what's left when your kind burns everything and calls it peace. Calhoun spat. You are shadows. Terrorists. You think fear makes you strong? No, Weller said. Fear just keeps you awake long enough to see the reckoning. And then he activated the final sequence. All across Kayla 7, screens lit up for the last time. Every civilian. Every soldier. Every worker. They all saw the same feed. A live stream from the throne room. Calhoun defeated. Weller standing over him. And then silence. No execution. No threat. Just Weller looking into the camera and saying, You called us cowards. You wanted to see what we feared. We feared becoming you. You made sure that happened. He looked down at Calhoun. History forgets tyrants. But it remembers ghosts. Then the feed cut. 10 minutes later, every Terran squad disappeared from Kayla 7. Not evacuated. Not captured. Just gone. No bodies. No footprints. Nothing. The dome stood. But empty. 3 days later, the Empire issued an internal memo declaring Kayla 7 under temporary quarantine due to infrastructural collapse. But no ships went back. No rescue teams were sent. Not a single Empire transmission mentioned the Terrans again. They had no name for what happened. Only a warning passed quietly between soldiers, from fleet to fleet. If you see one with the red visor, run. Back on Earth, Weller sat under a pale sky. No armor. No weapons. Just silence. Vega approached with a date pad. The Empire hasn't responded. Radio silence across all fronts. He nodded slowly. And our next move? She asked. He looked toward the horizon. We wait. Wait for what? He met her eyes. For them to realize we're still watching.